So what we need to do first is we need to create a new file. So once you've opened SolidWorks, go to File, New, make sure you select a part because we don't want an assembly or a drawing. Hit OK. We're going to create a sketch on the front plane. So we select front plane from the feature manager tree. We can either select sketch from here or we can go up here to select sketch. Either way is fine. Now you'll see that the front plane has oriented itself to a position where you can draw on it more easily, and we're going to create some construction geometry to make life a little bit easier for us. So we go up to the line tool here on the top left hand side, and we select the little down arrow here and go to center line. I'm just going to create some vertical and horizontal lines which will help us to attach our dimensions and will help us mirror the various things that we want to mirror. This is quite a good thing just to start off with anyway, depending on, particularly if you know you're going to use the mirror command, or you're going to have a symmetrical sketch. We're going to go to the origin. Now the origin is this little, these two little arrows. That's the center point of our sketch. It's also the intersection of the front plane, the horizontal plane, and the vertical planes. The three planes, the three default planes, all go through one point, and that's in the origin. Start off by moving our cursor over it, and you can see the little yellow icon has appeared. That means that when we click on that and we drag a line, what will happen is the end of that line will be attached to the origin, or it will have a relationship with that will start on the origin. Now as we draw the line up, we can drag the line up, we can see that we have a vertical little yellow symbol there. It tells us that that's vertical, so it snaps to the vertical, and it doesn't matter how long it is, we can just snap it to that. We want to make another vertical line that goes down, so we'll do exactly the same thing. Start on the origin, just drag a line vertically down, and then we're going to do two horizontal ones, one out to the right. Same thing, select the origin, drag our line out, and then we drag it to the left as well. So very quickly we've now got 4 lines which we can use for a variety of purposes. These lines, because they're dotted, it shows that they actually won't be used to create three-dimensional geometry. They'll only be used to assist us to draw the two-dimensional lines that will be used to create the three-dimensional geometry. Now I'll just hit escape, which will get me out of that line sketching mode, to create a circle. So we're going to go up to the circle tool here, select that, and we're just going to start with the center point on the origin. So we go to there, click on that, and hold your left mouse button down and drag a circle out. Don't worry about how big it is at the moment, because we're going to use dimensions to constrain the size. But what we've done is, by starting on the origin, we have constrained the position. So remember that all geometry, in order to be what we call fully defined, is we need to define the position and the size. Those two things are really important. With a circle can be defined by its positioning its center and defining the size of the circle, i.e. the diameter or the radius of the circle. Okay, so to get out of circle mode, hit escape, go to Smart Dimensions. As you can see, the circle at the moment is blue. That means that the size is not defined. You can't quite see the little center point there, but if you could, it would be black. When we put a dimension on it, so we'll just click on the outside of the circle, the dimension tool will tell us it's 151 at the moment. We want to change that to 100 millimeters diameter, and as you can see now the circle has changed size, and it's also gone black. So if we hit escape and get out of that, then we've got a completely black circle, which tells us that that's a fully defined circle. We're going to create the nose. We're going to create some features in the face, and we're going to create the nose by drawing a circle, and in exactly the same way as we drew the large circle, we're going to draw a smaller circle, starting on the origin and dragging a circle out. Then we're going to go to Smart Dimension tool. You'll notice I don't have to press escape. If I just select a different tool, then it automatically goes to the next tool. Select the outside of the circle, drag and drop a line there. Now we're going to make that diameter 20. Again, now you can see that the inner circle there that forms the nose is going to be is black, and so therefore it's fully defined. What we're going to do next is we're going to make the two eyes. So I'm just going to draw a line out here, circle, sorry, out here, and I'm not going to worry about constraining it at this stage. Now I'll show you this circle. If I just press escape, I grab the center of the circle, I can move that around anywhere and I can change the size to whatever I want. It's not constrained in any way. So I need to put a position, I need to define a position of that circle, and I need to define a size of the circle. But before I do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a second circle. The way I'm going to do that is I'm going to mirror this particular circle around, use this center line as the mirror line. So I select the center line, hold the control key down and select the eye, and now I go up to the mirror entities command, select that, and what it does is it creates two eyes. Now hit escape. If I select the center of the circle, you can see that the circles now will always be symmetrical about the center line that I've created, but they are completely free to be moved and still completely free to be resized. What I need to do is I need to define those positions and the sizes. Now, the size is easy. All we have to do is select the outside diameter and click like that. Let's make that 15 millimeters. And as you can see, both of them have changed because they are symmetrical. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to define the height of the height above the center, above the origin. So rather than selecting the origin, it's easier to select the horizontal line and create a dimension there, make that 20. So now it's still blue, and if you grab the center of the circle and you try dragging it, you can see that we've constrained the position, the vertical position, so it can't move in a vertical sense, it can only move in a horizontal sense, and they still remain symmetrical. So what we can do now is we can just determine the distance between the two eyes, because that's the dimension that makes sense. I could quite easily dimension one circle from the center line, but in this case it's just as easy, and it kind of makes a little bit more sense to dimension the width between the eyes. So let's make that 50, and now you see that the two circles are black and therefore fully defined. If we were to try and put more dimensions on them, let's say to dimension this, which doesn't make sense because we already have a dimension on that, what happens is it'll tell you that there's a problem and that we don't want that. Okay, so let's just hit escape and not do that. So what we're going to do next is we're going to create the hat on top of the head, and the way we do that is we're going to just draw one side first, and then we're going to use the mirror command to mirror it to the other side. This is quite a common way of developing sketches and lots of geometry, because it means that we know that the part is always going to be symmetrical regardless of what changes we might make later on. So for this I'm going to use the line tool. So I'm going to start off with a line, and we're going to have a relationship, an automatic relation from this vertical construction line. We're just going to draw it out. Again, not worrying about dimensions at all at the moment, just going to get the rough shape. We're going to do a vertical line, and again that snaps to the vertical. We need a brim on the hat, which comes out here, down here, and then this line goes all the way and will attach to the head. So as you can see now we have this, we can just stretch it sort of a bit closer to the right size. What we need to do though is to start putting dimensions on here. What we need to do is to think very carefully about what dimensions make sense. We can dimension this in a whole bunch of different ways, but what might be more useful is to think about what's important. So for example, we've got the brim of the hat. We could dimension the brim of the hat, put one dimension from here down to here, and then another one from the top of the hat to there, and then if we think, well, the hat needs to be 4 millimeters thick, we just have dimensions that are 4 millimeters apart. I'll show you what I mean. So we could dimension from here to here, call that 42, and oops, 42, and dimension from here to here and think, okay, so we want that 4mm, so that should be 46, so let's go like that. And we have a 2mm gap. But in reality, just Control Z to go back. In reality, we don't want that brim to be 4mm thick, so it makes more sense to put a dimension from here to here and make that 4mm. That's a sensible way to do it. And then we put a dimension from, well, actually, let's just leave that for now. The next thing that probably makes sense is we probably know the height of the hat. So let's just put a dimension on the height of the hat, and let's call that 30. That's about right. The next dimension we need to think about is the width of the brim. So we can select that line there, and we can select the center point. Now you'll see that's 50. Now because we've selected a center line, if we drag our cursor out here, you see it snaps out to 100. So what we're basically doing is, because we're dimensioning to a center line, we have that option. If we were dimensioning to a normal bit of construction geometry, it wouldn't do this. But generally, center lines, it kind of knows that center lines imply that there's going to be something symmetrical. So this makes a little bit more sense. We'll just click on that and we'll make that 90. We're going to do the same thing with this. Now, because we had a center line selected already, it's just decided that makes sense, and it's gone by default to making the diameter dimension rather than a radius dimension. So let's call it 60. Oops, 60. And as you can see, these lines now become black, but we still have some blue there as well. So one of the techniques, if we're not sure why this is blue, one of the techniques that's really useful is just to grab one of these blue bits of geometry and try dragging it. Now you can see that what happens here is that the bits that are constrained won't move, and the bits that are unconstrained will. And now we can see that the only thing we don't know is really what the position of the hat is in relation to the head. So basically how far down the hat is from the head. So to fix that, all we have to do is just to put a dimension from the bottom of the brim to the center line. And again, that doesn't make sense this time around to use the diameter. This time around we use more likely to be known as the radius. So we'll call that 40. And now you can see that's all black. Right, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select all this geometry, these lines that create the hat, and I'm going to mirror it about the vertical center line. Now, selecting geometry, there's a couple of ways of doing it. One, we could just hold the control key down and select each one of these bits of geometry individually, or what we can do is draw a window around those bits of geometry. This is the easy way to do it. So we select a window, so we basically click, drag, stretch a window over all that geometry, and you can see the bits that have gone blue are the bits that are selected. Also, these dimensions have been selected, but they're not relevant when it comes to mirroring, so that's fine. But what's important to know is that because I dragged, I'll just do that again, if I drag a rectangle like that, you can see that's blue, and that's just selected everything that's entirely within that rectangle, and nothing that just covers. If I do it the other way around, so starting from the right and going to the left, we have a green rectangle. Going that way it goes blue, going this way it goes green. Now this time what it does is it selects everything that the rectangle touches. It doesn't have to be entirely within the rectangle, just everything it touches. So they're the two ways of selecting a group of entities. So here we go again. Select the rectangle, only the things that are inside will be selected, and I also want to have this center line selected, so I need to hold the control key down and then select that center line, go to the mirror entities, and that mirrors everything across to the other side. Now, the only thing we haven't done is we'll still need to do is to remove this bit of the circle, because that's not what's required. So we go to the Trim Entities command. Now there's a bunch of options here with trim entities. I find the best one to use is trim to closest. It's much easier. So just select that, click on there, click on the bits that you don't want, and they will go away, and you should have something that looks like that. Okay, now the next thing we need to do is to create the mouth for the smiley face, and the way we're going to do that is we're going to create two arcs. So something like this, we're going to create the top arc forming the top of the mouth, and another center point arc to define the bottom of the mouth. So we're going to go to this tool up here, which is called center point arc. Now this time we're going to start on the origin in much the same way as we used to create the circles. We're going to drag a line out, and as you can see, it's starting to look like a circle, and that defines our diameter. And then what we need to do is just drag, and we define the width of the arc. What we're going to do now is we're just going to stop that, so snap it to the that vertical line like this, and that's the first of our center point arcs. Now the second center point arc, the center point wants to start below the origin. If we started on the origin, we'd just end up with an arc which was concentric with this one, which wouldn't give us the bottom of the mouth. So if we start here, we can drag a line out and get an automatic relation on the end of that line, then come down here and start dragging the bottom of the line until it snaps onto the vertical center line. So again, we've now got center point arcs which are undefined, so we can drag them around. What we need to do is we need to put a size and dimensions on both. So what we can do is we can first off put a radius dimension on the two arcs. So the lower arc we're going to have as a 25mm radius, and the upper arc is going to be a 30 radius. As you can see, the upper one's become black because we've got a radius. So we have a size dimension. We also have a position because the center of that arc has a relationship with the origin. Remember, that's how we created it. The bottom one though, the center point is still undefined. So one thing we could do is we could just put a dimension from the center point to the origin. That would be one way of defining it. The other way to define it will be to define this point out here, because again that's movable. If that's defined, then the other points will by necessity be defined as well. So again, I'm going to create a dimension from the end of the mouth to this line here, and because that's a center line, it gives us the option of dimensioning either to that line or to the width. Now once we mirror the other side of the mouth, then it will make more sense, but we want that to be 50, so let's just call that 50, and you can see those two bits of the mouth are now fully defined, and all we need to do is to select them. We're going to use Control, select both of those and the center line, and mirror the entities, and there you have it. That's our smiley face. The last thing we're going to do is we're going to turn this into a bit of three-dimensional geometry by very simply going into Features, and we'll use the command Extrude Emboss Base. Now by default this should be blind and at 10mm, so we're just going to hit OK, and there we have our three-dimensional smiley face. Now I'm rotating this by holding the center of the scroll key on the scroll wheel on my mouse, and then just moving that around, and that's how you can move your three-dimensional object, and you can zoom in and out by using the scroll wheel.